They stooped then to lift the body, and found that Théodred still breathed. But he lived only long enough to speak his last words. "Let me lie here, to keep the fords, till Éomer comes." Night fell, a harsh horn sounded, and then all was silent. Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we'll be looking at the small yet interesting history of Prince Théodred of Rohan, and muse about how things could have been different if he had survived. A huge thanks and shout out to Bo, who created the New Men of the West logo. A link to his Instagram is in the description below. Please go check out his other work. I really love this logo, so thank you so much. For more info, check out the articles and videos in the description and cards. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me here today. Let's begin our tale. Born to Théoden King and Queen Elfhild, Théodred, likely meaning Council of the People in Rohirric or Old English, was the sole heir of the crown of Rohan, for his mother would tragically die in childbirth. He was born in 2978 of the Third Age, and came of age in Edoras, learning virtue from his people, as well as the ability to fight and lead from horseback, and how to be royalty from his father, for he would be the second Marshal of the Riddermark, and there would be no true first Marshal of the Riddermark later in his life, as Théodred would effectively lead the warriors of Rohan into battle. Éowyn, Théodred's other cousin, would care for Théoden, allowing Théodred to ride out towards battle in the Riddermark, even as age and frailty overtook the king prematurely, in and around 3014 of the Third Age. Théodred and his shield brother Éomer quickly became the greatest threats to Saruman and Grima Wormtongue and their conquest of Rohan from within and without, and so Grima set to playing the two against each other in the mind of Théoden King, saying that Éomer's ambition went against the king and his heir. Saruman, however, would more physically strike at Théodred, knowing that he led Rohan's riders well. In early 3019, when Théodred was 41 years old, the prince established himself in Helm's Deep in the Westfold, taking control of the many forces there, with the help of many great lords of Rohan, Erkenbrand, the lord of Helm's Deep, Grimbold of Grimslade, who was a captain under Théodred, and Elfhelm, a captain who governed forces from Edoras. Théodred, who became well aware of the White Hand, mustered forces of the Westfold, while Elfhelm would bring his forces from the King's Land in days hence. Théodred would learn of a great gathering of troops at the gates of Isengard, and knowing that such an army was meant for Rohan, for his people, Théodred set out, securing both sides of the fords of Isen with troops, as to trap the orcs of Isengard within the valley. Taking cavalry, Théodred went over the Isen and came near to Isengard. Yet the Urux were prepared. Théodred's forces scouted the vanguard only, and the battle quickly turned ill when the main host of Saruman became apparent, and forces worked their way down both sides of the Isen. Théodred immediately ordered a retreat, and Grimbold aided in fighting back their pursuers. Eventually, Théodred rejoined with his forces and won the crossing at the fords of Isen for a time, but as the sun was setting, the forces from Isengard came down on both sides of the river. Uruk-hai, Orcish wolf riders, Dunlendings on horseback, all came down. Grimbold's men held back a larger force to the west. Théodred took to the Eight in the center of the river, and men held the east side against a smaller yet more deadly force. Soon the eastern fords were overtaken, and great orcs clad in mail, armed with axes, made their way to the Eight in the center of the river. Now this force had been given one purpose: to kill the Prince of Rohan. If they had been more strategic about the conquest of Rohan and less focused on one man during this battle, things might have gone more ill for the Riddermark at large. Anyway, these orcs made their way to Théodred and his guard, and hewed at them. The prince called to his men, and Grimbold heard, slashing his way through many orcs on the western side to make his way to the Eight. But alas, Grimbold came to his prince's aid too late, and Théodred was hewed down. Grimbold stood over his body and avenged him upon his orc killer, fighting till his last breath, but before Grimbold could also be slain, a new force appeared. Elfhelm and his men had come, and from the east his horsemen killed and drove back the host of Isengard, saving those who yet lived, but they could do nothing for the slain. Théodred spoke his last words ere he passed from Middle-earth, asking his men to let him lie there until Éomer, his brother-at-arms and cousin, came. And so Théodred and Rohan's hope that day died, as the first battle of the fords of Isen ended. Erkenbrand of Helm's Deep now had control over the western forces, and Elfhelm and Grimbold would be forced to muster their strength and prepare for another invasion by Saruman, while Éomer, the new heir of King Théoden, far to the east would soon track a great group of Uruks across the plain, headed for Isengard. Rohan would mourn for its prince, but Théoden did not truly understand the loss of his son until Gandalf the White's arrival and the saving of the king's mind. Indeed, the death of Théodred would have been the beginning of the end for Rohan, if Gandalf, the 3 hunters, the 2 hobbits, and the Ents had not aided them. As the prince and second marshal, he was a great leader and symbol of hope for the future, extinguished by Saruman's treachery. In many ways, Théodred's death mirrored that of Boromir of Gondor, for he was also the champion of his people, lost to them by evil. If Théodred had survived, the second battle of the Fords of the Isen, which led to the Battle of Helm's Deep, would have been different. Likely, while Théodred, Elfhelm, Grimbold, and the others would have still been scattered by Saruman's massive army, Erkenbrand and his men would have actually been in the Hornburg when the king arrived there, for Théoden would have likely been out on his way to aid Théodred, his son. And then he would have been turned aside by the overwhelming force of Uruks, just like he was in the book. Beyond this, Théodred would have provided aid for Gondor with his kin, and made a good king afterwards, with his friend Éomer probably going back to Aldburg, his home, and being Théodred's close advisor instead of the king. Yet Théodred's death, a portend for the evil that almost overtook Rohan, occurred. In his absence, Théoden and Éomer had to be the greatest kings and commanders they could be, remembering the prince and kinsmen they had so loved. And so we come to the end of our tale on Théodred. From the story of the Prince of Rohan, we see that, at times, we suffer losses that may be unnatural or unfair. Yet we owe it to the ones who are left, as well as the ones we have lost, to carry on in their names, upholding the values they upheld. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video on Prince Théodred, sad though his ending was. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts on this character? Let me know in the comments below. Théodred is another interesting character we know little about, yet I know he would have been a major player in the story if he had survived. Thanks to our Valar tier patrons, Kyle Wetzel, Peter Shepard, Jonathan Putin, M. Mark Kralik, Blair Scout, Merton, John Hume, Sam McBee, Matt Sabach, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, Reese Jenkins, Adam Petrulik, Brandon Glidden, Molly Sullivan, Daniel Burns, Anthony Harmon, Dorwin Gray, Arthur, and Merlin. Thank you so much, and thanks to all of our patrons and YouTube members. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the free peoples today. And I'll see you all again next week with a video on why men could not go to Valinor. You all are the best, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.